I will call to order City Council Tuesday, December 1st, City Council regular meeting. Need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. First item is consideration of the minutes. Anybody want to jump in on that?
Move to approve the minutes?
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. At that point, we have our public comment phase. I believe I'm looking at your list, Jenny. We don't have anybody signed up directly for just the public comment,
That's correct.
and there's nobody in the room. Okay, then we will forego the public comment and move directly to our first item, which is, hang on, I got it here. Public hearing, APP 2001. This is a hearing regarding the appeal request by Alderman of the Planning Commission's approval of AA 2001. Jeff and Jennifer Harrison appeal of the city's approval to issue a development building permit for 544 North Laurel Street. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the city council to hear this appeal at this time? Does any councilor believe he or she has a personal bias to declare? I do not. Does any councilor believe he or she has a conflict of interest? Has any councilor had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit?
Site visit.
Site visit?
Site visit.
Okay. And is there any additional new correspondence?
There was a packet of correspondence emailed out today for public comment.
Correct. Okay, staff report. Bill or Bruce?
I'll take that. Yeah. I'll start with the background. A City of Cannon Beach Planning Commission rendered a decision to reverse the administrative decision to approve a building development permit, BP 191084, for the Najimi residence at 544 North Laurel, tax lot 7000, map 51019AD of the Cannon Beach Preservation Plan Development Subdivision at the request of Jeffrey Harrison, 539 North Laurel Street, at its October 22nd, 2020 regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. The PC findings are attached as Exhibit 2. Dean N. Alterman, on behalf of Mr. Najimi, requested a review of the decision in an application and letter received November 3rd, 2020, within the 14 consecutive calendar days appeal period from the date the final order was signed. City Council held a scope of review meeting on November 10th to discuss, as a non-public hearing item, the terms under which it wishes to review the matter according to Section 1788-160 of the Cannon Beach Municipal Code. The applicant has requested a limited scope of review for the two reasons provided in Exhibit A. The City Council, under the guidance of 1788-140 through 160, rendered a scope of review decision on November 10th to restrict the review to on the record appeal based on the evidence that was presented before the Planning Commission. So I'd like to just summarize findings and the grounds of appeal. And in those findings, I'll jump right to the conclusions of law. on page 5. The Planning Commission considered the testimony presented and discussed the exception standards regarding building heights, questioning the intent of the exception in relation to residences, using these exceptions as observation decks or facilities to skirt the building height limitations. The commission also questioned the appropriateness of allowing loft areas, whether they be classified as storage or sleeping and approachable by only a ladder or other temporary egress, to be classified as non-habitable. Commissioner Kerr stated that if the turret wasn't intended to be utilized, it wouldn't have windows. The Planning Commission finds that the purpose and intent of the language is not upheld by allowing this projection above 28 feet as specified in the ordinance. It should be removed. Commissioner Newton read condition 16 under bullet point 4 from the plan development approval into the record. Should any lot contain a garage or carport, it shall be no larger than a 2-car garage. Garages or carports may be located under a house due to the natural topography, but if the garage is detached, then the garage may not include a second story or livable space. The exterior of any garage must be the same as the house. Commissioner Newton challenged staff's reading of the condition that each garage must be limited to a 2-car garage and instead insists that the condition's intent is to limit each lot to 1 2-car garage. The commission contends that the driveways cannot be used as outdoor living space and common shared open space, as that was not the intent of the plan development language and that has been distorted in this usage. The commission finds that the driveway easement should be removed from the outdoor living calculation. And the motion, having considered the evidence in the record upon the motion by Commissioner Kerr, seconded by Commissioner Knopp, the Cannon Beach Planning Commission hereby unanimously approves a reversal of the administrator's approval of the Najimi Building Development Permit upon administrative appeal P 19-1084, as discussed at the public hearing, demanding the removal of the turret as illegal and requiring the removal of the driveway from the common/shared open space calculation. To summarize, the initial Harrison letter of appeal development permit stated 4 grounds for review, of which 2 remain as 1 grounds of the findings. The objection over the dual use of the common outdoor living space, where common outdoor living space is not defined within the plan development chapter 1740 of the Cannon Beach Municipal Code. And dual use is defined under the general requirements of the zoning ordinance as 1790.60, dual use of required open space. No lot area, yard, or other open space, or off-street parking or loading area which is required by the zoning ordinance for one use shall be required lot area, yard, or other open space, or off-street parking or loading area for another use. By Mr. Harrison's and the Planning Commission's findings, understanding of this definition would equate to reading of all the homes in Cannon Beach, every home, that they can no longer utilize their driveway or non-required parking areas in the setbacks as they are being dual used. And that area can no longer be calculated in their open space calculations for their lot coverage. Further, staff has shown that the parking area easement, the 660 square feet being utilized by the Harding garage, would not bring the square footage below the 40% threshold required for the outdoor living space, and that the rest of the driveway area is not required. In other words, each lot has to have 2 parking spaces. That's a required area for the parking, but a driveway is not required area of a lot. And so this dual use language does not apply. It would be like saying the first 15 feet of every home in Cannon Beach cannot use that driveway under the reading that is in place. So, but this isn't the relevant issue. before the city council for Mr. Altman on behalf of Mr. Najimi's appeal of the planning commission's decision. The issue boils down to what is defined in the plan development ordinance. Under Cannon Beach Municipal Code 1740.40, plan development procedure states, there shall be a 3-stage review process for plan development, consisting of pre-application stage 1, preliminary approval stage 2, and final approval stage 3. Pre-application stage 1 goes on to state that you have to have the schematic drawing, the scale, the written statement, and all that. B, preliminary approval, stage 2, distinctly calls out streets, driveways. And then under D, a tabulation of the land area to be devoted to open space, streets, or other uses, and a calculation of the average residential density per net acre. And then we go on to C, final approval, stage 3. The final plan shall conform in all major respects with the approved preliminary development plan. The final plan shall include all information included in the preliminary plan, plus the following. And it goes on to include the location of water, sewage, drainage facilities, and other things like that. But it says 3, upon receipt of the final development plan, the Planning Commission shall conduct a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 1778. The Commission shall examine such plan and determine A, whether it conforms to all applicable criteria and standards, and B, whether it conforms in all substantial respects to the stage 2 approval. The Planning Commission may require such changes in the proposed development or impose such conditions of approval as are in its judgment necessary to ensure conformity to applicable criteria and standards. In so doing, the commission may permit the applicant to revise the plan within 30 days. Any conditions of approval or changes to the proposed development plan required by the Planning Commission may be appealed by any party of record to the City Council. The Planning Commission decision may be appealed to the City Council pursuant to 1788-140. To put it simply, if the city didn't wish to include the driveway and parking easements in the calculation of the common outdoor living space or allow it as a dual use, they had 2 appropriate times to require something different. CBMC 1740-40B, stage 2D, when approving the preliminary plan, or at CBMC 1740-40C, stage 3, final approval 1 and 3, prior to signing and approving the plat. One that specifically states the areas dedicated to each easement, lists the recorded easement and deed documents, which was signed on April of 2016. The city officials who signed that document bear the responsibility of meeting Cannon Beach Municipal Code 1792 and the obligations that go with it. Signing a plat is not simply a symbolic effort, but requires verifying that what is on the plat is in agreement with what was approved. Finally, if someone objected, including Mr. Harrison, CBMC 1740-40C3 provides the appeal procedures. I will note that Exhibit C1 in the matter of plan development stage 3 approval request for the Nicholson plan development dated March 8, 2016, and included in the LUBA record 2016-33, page 1 through 17, gives an excellent summary of this entire process. And so if you go to that record, which is, like I said, in your packet as Exhibit C1, and you look at this document, it walks you through exactly what I just read as the procedures of approval of the plan development and the signing and approving of the plat. If you go to page 5, it states, which is page 7 of the legal record, but page 5 of 15 states the C1, the final plan shall be sufficiently detailed to indicate fully the ultimate operation and appearance of the development. And it goes on to say, although the city council understands that it could interpret this provision to require a greater level of detail, the city council believes that with the information that it has, as well as the conditions that it is placing on the plan, the proposed final plan is sufficiently detailed to indicate fully the development's ultimate operation and appearance. On page 7, it goes on under the CBMC 1740-40C4 section, the decision of the city council shall be final. The city council has followed this procedure. This criteria at the bottom of that page, which is page 7 of 15, these criteria were addressed by the city council at the preliminary plan approval stage in March 2015. The council determined that the proposal met these criteria and the decision was upheld on appeal by the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. Finally, on page 11 of 15, at the final plat, a plan development is a modified subdivision. Approved subdivision plats must be recorded with the county surveyor. The plat cannot be recorded until the city's review is completed. Cannon Beach Municipal Code Section 1604-210 establishes procedures for the plat review process. Just under that, after it states those standards, the final plat submitted by the applicant on March 1st, 2016 conforms to the tentative plan and meets all conditions. Approval condition 12 implements that requirement. And that condition reads, applicant shall record a final plat with the county surveyor. If it is substantially the same as the final plat approved by the city council, the chairman of the city planning commission shall sign it in accordance with CBMC 1604-210. The second of the grounds stated in the Planning Commission finds will be before the Planning Commission in December for their recommendations as a zoning ordinance amendment to the exceptions to the building height language. That language reads 1790.80 exceptions to building height regulations. Projections such as chimneys, spires, domes, elevator shafts, towers, wind generators, aerials, flagpoles, and other similar objects not used for human occupancy are not subject to the building height limitations of the zoning ordinance. This definition may be clear enough to the city council, or as the planning commission so eloquently put it, idiot's language, but I can say that it hasn't been in the past, at least to the administrators, city staff, those that administrate this ordinance. As my conversation with the applicant during the review process highlighted, and from which Mr. Harrison quoted in one of his statements, previous city planners have allowed an assortment of these exceptions over the years, as one can see throughout the city, with some allowing internal entry and some external. Staff promised back in January, when they came before the city council on this plan development, that they would address these issues and introduce changes to the zoning language. Such changes, including this definition, along with habitable space and other language pertinent to the misunderstandings of this case, will make their way to the Planning Commission this month. And although may not alleviate this tower, will clarify the situation going forward. So any questions?
Okay, no questions? Bruce or Bill, do you have anything to add to the staff report?
No, Jeff covered it pretty well. RS 19763 on the record, and otherwise, unless you have questions, I think it's time to hear from the appellant and others.
Okay. Okay then. I will call for public testimony. The appeal will be reviewed against the criteria of the Municipal Code, Chapter 17-88140, request for a review of a decision. Chapter 17-88150, requirements of a request for appeal of a planning commission decision. And Chapter 17-88151, 170, review on the record and applicable sections of the zoning ordinance, conditions of approval of the Cannon Beach Preservation Plan Development Subdivision and approved plat. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or the municipal code which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The City Council shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the mayor, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Testimony is limited to matters which are raised at the Planning Commission hearing in written or orally. New evidence may not be submitted. New evidence may not be submitted, nor will it be considered. Is there a presentation by the appellant?
That would be Dean Altman.
There we go.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Dean Alterman. My address has changed slightly since my letter to you. 805 Southwest Broadway, Suite 1580, Portland, Oregon 97205. I'm here appearing on behalf of Mr. Najimi, the applicant for the building permit. Only two issues are before you, as your staff report states, the turret and the common driveway. I'd like to dispose of the turret issue very easily because the common driveway is the more significant one. The turret issue has something to do with the house, obviously. It's specific to Mr. Najimi's application. As I describe in my letter, the Uniform Building Code is very clear about projections like that, not counting as habitable space. Your code is clear like that. As you have just heard from your staff, you have consistently interpreted your code to allow projections of that sort that are not habitable space. There was some discussion about a hypothetical ladder that might someday go to the space. That was brought up by a planning commissioner. It's not in the plans. There is no access other than a hatchway provided. You can't count it as habitable space based upon one person's hypothesis, which isn't in the plan. The more significant issue is the Planning Commission's major error in how it dealt with the common driveway and in determining that it was not open space. The reason that is an error is that it has nothing to do with the design or location of Mr. Najimi's house. It is a challenge to the plat. It's a challenge to a plat that you, Mr. Mayor, signed in April of 2016, that the planning director signed, that the county signed. The Planning Commission is 4 years too late if it wants to appeal and challenge the plat itself. They are simply wrong on the law at that point. As regards the common driveway, though, if you are going to get into the math, as the diagrams in the record show you, the common driveway occupies at a maximum about 5,700 square feet of this 25,000 square foot site. Habitable space is limited to 9,000 feet. The setbacks that were imposed as a condition of approval limit the total footprint of all buildings put together to just over 10,000 square feet. If you assume a reasonable number of two-floor houses, it's clear that the open space on this property, even at maximum build out, is going to be more than 40% of the site, unless you assume that everybody will build a one-floor house. And as you know from the application before you, that is simply not the case. I don't know why the Planning Commission chose to take up the issue of the plat again, but in arguing that the plat does not meet the standards of your PUD, they are applying a standard that simply doesn't apply to building permits. Your code doesn't require that an application for an individual building permit comply with the PUD ordinance. It requires that it comply with the building permit ordinance and various other provisions. The record, as your staff has told you now, and as your staff told the Planning Commission, is clear that this application complies with the requirements for this lot. The rest is ancient history. You should grant the appeal, grant the permit, and approve Mr. Najimi's house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any presentations by proponents? I guess we have to raise your hand on this. This is proponents. I see Jeff is trying to connect.
Yeah, let me get his, I think he's on his phone.
No, he's on video.
Well, his audio is not connected. He's connected via phone.
But aren't we on proponents?
Excuse me?
We're on proponents though right now.
Right. Which he wouldn't be.
He would be a component, I believe.
He's not.
Correct.
Correct.
He's talking.
But Jen, don't we have his, when we get to opponents, we could read his letter if we need.
Yeah, that was sent into the additional correspondence.
Oh, okay.
I believe all the people who requested to speak were opponents.
I agree.
So it doesn't appear there are any proponents.
Just up on.
Mr. Najimi, was he on here?
I did not speak.
No, Mr. Altman is indicating that he's not on here. Mr. Altman represents his interests.
Okay. At that point, we will go to, are there any presentations by opponents? And now we gotta find if we can connect to Jeff.
So it looks like Mr. Harrison is not connected to the audio. I'm not quite certain what his options are. Rusty may have an idea.
Well, in the past, Bruce has called people to get them online.
Oh, there, let me see now.
He
Hold
was
on.
connecting through audio through his phone. So he was going to do video through the computer and audio through the phone. So
Oh.
Rusty's looking for his.
Now I think he's connected.
Jeff,
I'm trying to do whatever I need to do to be heard.
you're there.
We've got an echo. Could you turn off your phone?
Yeah, I was trying to only join by phone because I have
Still
a terrible.
Yeah. How about your computer?
You can't now join my computer with audio, but it's pretty bad.
Oh, one of them,
Just use my phone for audio.
that'll work.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Rusty, you gotta find his phone.
I found his phone, but he needs to acknowledge on his end, I think.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
I'm sorry that took such an effort.
We're getting used to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Good evening. My name is Jeff Harrison. Mailing address is P.O. Box 742, Cannon Beach. Before I get started with my prepared statement, I noted that the staff report given tonight was very different than what was published on the website and what I downloaded and read. And there were significant and multiple new arguments made. I'd like to have a chance to review those and respond to those, but I don't know when that opportunity would be. But that was new information that was, I thought, not allowed for tonight. And there's quite a bit of it. So anyway, we'll come back to that. But to begin with my statement, we hope you had a great holiday. I just have a few things to summarize tonight from our testimony at the Planning Commission, and wanted to respond to the staff report that I read and the form filed for this appeal. Number one, first, we're a bit confused because the published notice of public hearing for tonight is only sufficient for the decision on the scope of review and does not adequately satisfy the notice requirements for council plans to decide the merits of the appeal itself. There was no concise description of the proposed action or listing of the applicable criteria known to apply to the application at issue. It also did not state the procedure to be used for the conduct of the hearing. How then is the public supposed to know how to effectively participate? Number two, on his appeal form, Mr. Alterman claims the Planning Commission granted our appeal on a ground that he says we did not raise, namely that the driveway should not be counted as outdoor living area. He's incorrect. We did bring this up on September 24th, as shown on page 6 of the listed Exhibit D3. We don't know why Mr. Alterman chose not to respond that night or a month later on October 22nd. Number three, on the city's website for this hearing, none of the record materials for the listed section D exhibits public comment were provided. The exhibits were included, they're shown in the index, but they're not, the attachments are not there. The exhibits included over 10 public letters of support for AA 20-01 and a significant portion of our testimony for AA 20-01. The Planning Commission used this material to reach and support their decision. The record provided for tonight's appeal is incomplete. How can you hold an appeal hearing on the record if the record from below is missing substantial and critical public testimony? Number four, the sheet C2.2, which is referenced in the PUD condition number 16 for setbacks, is clearly marked preliminary, not for construction purposes. Now that we have a construction request, it is time to ensure the plans do meet code and conditions. They do not. We showed the Planning Commission how they don't. Your Planning Commission agreed unanimously. We also don't believe the plans submitted for this lot are what council envisioned, nor do they align with the comprehensive plan. This is a request to build a large two-story house with a large garage on a lot that already has a large two-story, 840 or 630 square foot garage studio. The lot would be virtually covered by buildings and driveway. The result would be no accessible or usable green space at all. It would be a virtual compound and would not fit into our neighborhood any more than the concrete wall. The building is not generally small in scale and appropriate to its setting, as spelled out and fostered in our comp plan. It is not true to claim that the attempted inclusion of the driveway and required yard setbacks as shared outdoor living space was ratified by council or LUBA. The color-coded map provided by Mr. Adams, which confirms the prohibited dual use or double counting of this space, was not even part of the LUBA record. Assumed compliance on this issue should not be accepted as a factual argument here. LUBA did not ratify this PUD in full compliance then and forever on this issue. The Planning Commission acted correctly and within its jurisdiction to order the removal of the driveway from the outdoor space requirement. This is not a regular subdivision. It is a planned unit development, which must comply with additional laws on top of the underlying zoning code. There must be 7,500 square feet of legitimate shared outdoor living space. No waiver of reduction of yard was requested or granted, and dual use of the same space to satisfy two code requirements, yards and shared outdoor living space, is prohibited. Your Planning Commission voted unanimously to uphold AA 20-01. Please support your commission and please deny APP 20-01. Please require submissions of new plans that, number one, do not dual use or double count either the required setbacks or the driveway as shared outdoor living space. Number two, do not include a second garage. Number three, do not violate the 28-foot height maximum for the R2 zone. Number four, do not violate the floor area ratio by excluding areas of the existing garage. As Commissioner Kerr said during the Planning Commission's deliberation of AA 20-01, I don't believe the applicant went to great efforts to comply. I think they went to great efforts to get around anything they could to get the biggest house they could on the property. Please do not approve any more buildings on this PUD until it is fully compliant with the living wall and the shared outdoor living space requirements. Please start making the best of this PUD and don't make it worse. I will close the way I opened to the Planning Commission. We're here tonight because we love our home, we love our neighborhood, we love our neighbors, and we love Cannon Beach. Thank you as always for your service to Cannon Beach. Please deny this appeal. And I'd like an opportunity to respond to the new information brought up by Mr. Adams at some further time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other opponents? I have listed Jan. Jan, would you like to say something? Find her.
Down at 1-2.
Yeah, I just tried to.
Yes, hello.
There we are.
Can you
Jan?
hear me?
Yes?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jan Siebert Warmond, P.O. Box 778, Cannon Beach, Oregon 97110. Dear Mayor and City Councilors, first, I spoke in regard to this matter at the Planning Commission meeting on October 22nd, 2020, but did not receive a notification of tonight's appeal as a party of record normally would. I hope that can be corrected. Tonight, I ask you to please respect our Cannon Beach 28-foot limitation on our building heights with regard to this Najimi appeal, and to not allow the proposed turret to be built. Also, the Najimi house as currently proposed would be too large, as its floor area ratio would be over the maximum, when the Harding garage and loft on the property would be included in the FAR calculations as they should be. The lot, as our Planning Commission recognized, already has the Harding garage on it, and the Nicholson planned unit development conditions clearly state that there be a single garage per lot. Please do not allow more than one garage on any lot in this PUD. Next, the common shared outdoor living space calculations should not include the driveway, as our Planning Commission acknowledged. The setbacks also should not be included. Please make sure this PUD has the actual required amount of common shared outdoor living space before any more building is approved there. Further, please bring the PUD living wall into true compliance before any more building there is allowed. Finally, please use our comprehensive plan as a guide when developers seek to push our building limits here. Our Cannon Beach legacy depends on it. Please uphold our Planning Commission decision and deny this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, I have one other name I listed, Phil Morton, but I don't see any connection.
There is somebody
That's
raising
Phil?
their hand.
That'd be, okay. All it says is Samsung.
You're
Okay.
right. You're right. Can you hear me?
We do. Go ahead.
My name is Phil Morton. My mailing address is Post Office Box 2556, Wilsonville 97070. And my brother and I own the cabin that's at the foot of Laurel, just down the street from the property in question on the east side of the road. And it's been in the family for 52 years. So in regards to the living wall, that's sort of a fly in the ointment for us. It still doesn't look good. And specifically, I remember looking at, I believe there are artists' illustrations 2 or 3 years ago. This whole thing came up, and it had some sort of plants that draped over and draped down the wall, and essentially would eventually hide probably the majority of the concrete. And that certainly isn't what we have today. So we would like to see that addressed and fixed at some point. In regards to the turret, that exceeds the 28 foot, the turret size is about 9.6 by 6.6, goes straight up. And at the top of that are 3-foot high windows. They're on all 4 sides. And so the top of the windows are about at the 6-foot height. And from the floor of this turret to the ceiling line looks to be, according to the drawings, about 7 feet. I think it's like an open beam ceiling, so it goes up to the ridge a little higher. But in the letter from Mr. Alderman, and you already cited this once this evening, but where he's talking about the exceptions to the building height regulations, he's pointed out the chimneys, domes, elevator shaft housings, towers, wind generators, flagpoles, and other similar objects not used for human occupancy. I don't believe that this tower fits any of those. And in my mind, it clearly looks like eventually it'll be like an observation tower. Otherwise, why the windows in the exact right place, etc. I know there's just a hatch there now, but that's just my belief. Moving on. Pardon me? Okay, moving on, the floor area ratio issue. I'm just having a hard time understanding why there'd be approval of a home that's 3,700 square feet plus on a lot that already has a large 2-story garage, and that this garage is not being counted in the floor area, at least the loft portion of it, or the loft portions I believe should be. If you look at the plat plan, these 2 structures, the existing new garage, 2-story garage, and the house would pretty much, and including the driveway, would pretty much cover the entire lot, leaving just the buildings and a driveway with almost no yard at all. That doesn't seem to fit what's wanted here. In regards to the floor area calculations themselves, we've heard that the 2-story loft area is not being counted, and that as all of the floor area. And I disagree with this. This structure, as I understand it, has 100,000 BTU furnace already installed in it, heated floor in the garage. And I just firmly believe that someday that upstairs area is going to be turned into living space. Obvious, but that's just my opinion. Allowing for the overbuilding on this lot just doesn't seem to be what was approved when the development was first allowed. I don't think that really it doesn't sound like it fits in with what the intent of the approval was. So it seems like there shouldn't even be a second garage there, as forgot her name, the lady mentioned before me, mentioned that the requirements are that only 1 garage can exist on the property. And in summary, I feel that this application for appeal should be denied, and have the drawings redone or redesigned to fit these requirements that I mentioned and others, and hopefully get it back to something that'll fit all the rules and regulations and fit in within our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, at that, is there a staff response?
We have Jennifer Harrison on the list also.
Yeah, is Jennifer on there?
Yeah, I think that's one. Let's hold on a second.
Didn't see her on the,
She's on the phone. I'm trying to unmute her.
Hello?
there we go.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Harrison, and our mailing address is P.O. Box 742, Cannon Beach. We have of course known since 2016 that houses would be built on the Nicholson PUD, but we thought the city would make the best of a bad situation going forward. We did not expect a fifth building that council did not approve. Hoped the living wall would be not still be the ugly concrete eyesore we predicted, and did not expect big and tall houses. The requested turret for this building would extend upwards past the 28-foot height limit. The Planning Commission determined it illegal and ordered it to be removed. Planner Adams said he felt that the code exception for height was only for government and religious buildings, not for personal use. As we told the Planning Commission, our western view, which is already degraded by the fifth two-story building in a four-building PUD, would be further degraded by an overly tall and large house. We would be looking at a wall of tall, dark buildings. We looked at the examples listed for height exceptions in our code, and an accessible viewing platform like this turret is unlike any of them. The examples given, like flagpoles, elevator shaft housings, wind generators, and chimneys, are all functional, not for personal use. The only one that might be considered accessible by humans is the chimney, and even then, only if you're Santa. 9 public letters of support for AA 20-01 were submitted to Planning Commission on September 24th. All of them were submitted on time and are referred to in the 924 Planning Commission minutes. However, none of these are included in the record for council or the public for tonight's hearing. These letters are for Jane Emmerich, Daryl Kluge, Diane and Rex Amos, Tivea Goosen, Kent, Maureen, Carly and Maggie Suter, Phil Morton, Tommy Huntington, Dale and Linda Hintz, and the Reverend Douglas Hadley. I was able to find them on the internet using Google. People obviously felt strongly enough about supporting AA 20-01 to spend the time to write and submit them. Why are these missing from the record for you and the public tonight? Not only do they deserve to be heard, they are required to be provided as part of the record for this appeal. On Halloween, despite no wrongdoing by us, Mr. Najimy sent one of CB's finest, a uniformed police officer, to our house to serve a trespass notice and request a signature. There has been no trespassing. We view this as an act of attempted intimidation. Please deny this appeal and uphold your Planning Commission's decision on AA 20-01. Thank you.
Okay, now, staff, do you have a response?
Prior to staff's response, it may be useful to have the applicant get a final opportunity for rebuttal.
I've got that listed the other way around, but I don't care. It's just on the list that I was given, the staff report, and then there's a chance for proponent statements.
You can have it either way, whichever is most useful, but typically we have all the public testimony, whether it's proponents, appellants, and then staff answers questions as needed.
No problem. Dean, do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dean Alderman again for MJ Najimy. I think I've laid out the arguments fairly well in my written material and in my prior presentation. I do want to respond to one specific point. 3 of the opponents said that the required setbacks the setbacks required in the plat should not and could not, should not be counted as open space, that whatever the city chooses to count as the common open space can't include any of the setback area, can't include required yards and so forth. I'd like to point out to you that if you take the required setbacks, you are left with, as I mentioned, approximately 10,000 square feet of available footprint. If you then take 40% of the 25,000 foot site and say that 40% of open space must be in addition to the space of the setbacks, there is left a total building footprint for 4 houses put together of approximately 600 square feet. That, I submit, could not have been the city's interpretation in 2016. It cannot be a reasonable interpretation now, and yet it is the interpretation the opponents of this 4-year-old subdivision are encouraging you to adopt. I'd ask again that you grant our appeal, grant Mr. Najimi his permit. He has proposed a plan that complies with the written requirements the city imposed on this plat, and it's 4 years too late to go back and try to revisit whether the city made a sound decision or not in 2016. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And Jeff might be able to touch on some of the substantive issues, but I did want to address 2 procedural issues that came up in the testimony. First, about the notice issue, I believe it was Mr. Harrison who suggested that the notice was inadequate. I think the notice that went out was adequate, and certainly to the extent the applicant or someone believes they were misled, they try to put as much useful information as we can. It's always a balancing act of putting too much and not enough. So I don't think that's an issue. Another issue that came up with several commenters was what's in the public record and what isn't. You'll notice that Mr. Adams has started to make documents available online. Prior to this, they weren't available online, but were available in the file at the city. The record still contains all of those documents. They are part of the record. And the fact that they weren't online doesn't change what the council can do. Certainly they are on the record and part of what the city council should do, to the extent any city councilor believes that they were not able to access them because they weren't available directly linked from the web. We can talk about what to do in that case. But those items are still in the record. They're still in the file at the city, and they're still part of what the council should make a decision on. And with that, Jeff, do you have any additional comments on the substance?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to that, as well as that, yes, I agree that it's up to the city council if they want to, if they don't feel that the record was adequate and that they wanted that, from my understanding, you can continue this hearing and make a decision on another at another date. The other point that I wanted to bring up was Mr. Harrison brought up that some things were not in the staff report, but every one of my arguments is just a summary of the plan development procedures and a reading of those, trying to let the public and the city council understand where your decision's coming from. That this is about a building permit application and a decision on a building permit. And just as Mr. Alterman said, this has met these plan development and it was in our findings that from the LUBA record, which is also has been in the record continuously. And I just restated those things. I did not bring any new evidence. That was simply it. And so, I feel that you have those documents, and I just restated them to put the summary of why you should focus on what's before you tonight.
Okay. I'd just like to add a little bit also. I was able on the packet to go to the staff report for this item. Item number C has a click, and it clicks to all the documents. So I was able to find some questions there for myself. Just so, took a while, but I figured it out.
Sam, I think he was talking about D, not C.
Letters, yeah. I didn't get any letters. I didn't see any letters.
Yeah, D is in dog.
No? So under the list of attachments, you go down to letter C, it says link to the public record documents. Click here. So I did. Anyhow, that will close the public hearing and we will now move for consideration. So any questions by the council or direct comments?
Well, this is Robin. It does concern me that we don't have all of the letters and documents for people to pull up. I understand what Jeff's saying, Jeff Adams is saying about the fact that we're fortunate to have this as a tool currently because of what Rusty's been able to provide to us. But I do feel that when we're on the record, that that's very important that everything be there.
I didn't see any letters from people. I saw the C documents. It was a little confusing about what to download and what, what was available and what to down. I mean, even 4 o'clock this afternoon, I was still realizing there were some more things to download. But I read all the C documents and all the A documents, but I didn't see any D documents that were from residents.
And I'm, like I said, I'm happy to, we'll put the notice out and redo that if we need to, if you feel that's what, you want.
I would assume that they want to do a continuance.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you,
I think that's the fair way to go because none of these D1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 are available. And the letters.
I'd still like to discuss it tonight, but I would like to see the letters.
If I can just say, I apologize for the missing things. From our standpoint, and I'll take responsibility for it. We are developing several people in this chain, and it just didn't, that got missed. I didn't catch it, so.
I wanted it to be de novo. That would have even been more fun.
I find the letters in my email. I found the letters in the email.
Yeah, we got a couple of letters today.
Yeah.
But those are different.
Those are new. Those are different than what.
Those are today's letters, not the ones that we should have received on the record.
So it sounds like the commission wants to make sure it reviews those letters that came into the planning commission and goes through those. We've had the hearing and the opportunity for the parties to have their make their arguments to the council. I know that there's another council meeting coming up here shortly. We could continue this. Rusty can make sure those are then available on the website, and then come back to continue the deliberations after the council's had an opportunity to review those documents, if that makes sense.
Well, I'd like to discuss the issue tonight. Maybe delay the decision until we read the letters, but I'd sure like to go through the discussion because next week is going to be as long or longer a council meeting as it is tonight.
Sure.
Okay, then. That makes sense. Let's discuss.
Maybe Jeff Adams can help me with this area ratio, this green space. There's so many different maps and overlays and the plat and the plans and the arguments and the proponents, the opponents. It really, I thought I was smart enough to figure it out, and I wasn't. And then I ran into a place, and I can't find it now to point it out, but it said that in the Jimmy lot has been increased in size by having 400 square feet deeded to it from the Hardings and 600 square feet deeded to it from lot number 3 that he owns, which makes that a bigger lot.
No.
Well, then,
Not the lot, the maximum habitable space. So how much, so it's like taking the 9,000 square feet of maximum habitable space, okay, for the entire lots, all 4 of the planned development. When they decided that in the original plan development plating and conditions, what they decided was 9,000 square feet split amongst the 4 different units. And it gives in those conditions a rough estimate of what those should be at the start or what they're assigned to at the start. But it says within the same agreements and the conditions that those can be adjusted or traded between the 2 as long as they're recorded by deed. And we've received some stated deeds between those transactions between different lots. So you're not increasing the lot sizes, you're increasing how much buildable or floor area ratio on one lot as opposed to the other 3 lots. So one's going to subtract while the other one increases, but it's going to stay at 9,000 square feet.
in total, but the 2 lots have lost available square footage of the habitable space.
Yeah.
And the 1 lot has gained.
Right. And so
that raises the question back to the lot that has a garage and an ADU on it. They call it loft. We know that it's fully equipped. So is that part of the habitable space? It seems to me that it is. There's a 5th building there.
There is, yes. So it is part of the maximal habitable space as explained in the conditions of plan development. Yet certain things are not included within habitable space, right? And so what Mr. Harrison or the argument was is that not all of the floor area ratio is being calculated. So he's adding all the other things that would fall under what we would call gross floor area. So that's a different term than what's being included. And so when we explain about the loft, that's the crux of taking it over that, because we are not including that loft area. We made them remove stairs so that it is not considered habitable space. That's how our building official, who is in charge for the city of Cannon Beach determining what habitable space is, it falls to the Oregon Building Code under our code, zoning code and building code. It falls to the Oregon Building Code, and that's defined by Alton under our jurisdiction, our building official. And he has things under the Oregon Building Code that he determines whether it's a habitable space or not. And that is, they had originally had a stair access to, just like the turret, had stair access to this space. And we made them remove that access to that space. Now,
which can easily be added after the building's done.
And once again, it brings us back to, as we said at the Planning Commission and before you back in January, that these things, if you want to resolve these, it's not done post haste. It's done in a new zoning ordinance, which will be before them in December, talking about exactly these terms. And so the Planning Commission will be reviewing these on December 22nd, along with unit size. And I hope everyone out there understands that and goes to our city website to review this language, because it's important language that's being proposed. And each one of these terms there's proposed drafted language for that, and they may not be what we end on, as you guys know, from this process, but it proposes solutions to these kind of terms. So you can get to I think many of these points that we're having difficulties with by simply defining it better. And you do not have to have habitable space fall within all of what you determine as floor area. And currently the language is being proposed for the zoning ordinance amendment is saying that 2,000 square foot gross floor area. And gross floor area is everything that's pretty much under a roof, habitable, not habitable. And so that's a broader term and a more defined kind of term. That's everything enclosed under a, that's a long answer to that, but I tried to get to the floor area ratio and the loft.
And I'm trying to look at the intent that was the understanding of the council that approved that PUD and the understanding that the planning commission has, which will ultimately determine these definitions. And they have already ruled on what they think those definitions are going to be. And to say, well, technically they were in error, so technically we should approve this, I think is going beyond the intent. It may have been sloppy, but the understanding was not that there would be 5 buildings on this property. The understanding there'd be a PUD was allowed to get some density, smaller cottages, and avoid a great big McMansion at the top of the hill. And we've ended up with a great big McMansion at the top of the hill. And we don't know what's going to come. Then maybe they'll trade off some more acreage or square footage and have another big house down there.
They can't. They're limited to 9,000 maximum, exactly as was determined in the order.
And they could end up with 2 4,500 square foot properties.
They did, excuse me?
They could end up with 2 4,500 square foot properties. And one that you can't build anything on.
Nothing,
has no,
right, exactly. And so.
Well, and that was not the intent, Jeff. That was not the understanding when this was put together. We were painted a picture of this nice green area, preserving trees, a green wall, cottages, and preserving one historic building. None of that happened. And now we're playing games by having an easement and allowing somebody to build a garage and a it's not a loft. Call it a loft if you want to. But it was designed and built as living area. And to remove the stairs and say no longer is it livable is foolish. Nobody's going to believe that. So we now have 5 potential buildings there on that lot or that PUD. So I understand your position. You're looking literal words that are there with a very, very strict interpretation. The Planning Commission, I think, looked at what is understood by our comprehensive plan, understood by the nature of the community, understood by the hearings that went on when that PD was approved. And I'm one of those that got snookered because I didn't see that teeny tiny fine print on the last day that PUD was presented for approval. It was presented as though, well, here's the final. We've all discussed it. You've approved it. Here it is. And it was not the same thing we had approved, and yet it got signed. Okay, we screwed up. But I'm not willing to continue to perpetuate a con job like that. Anyway, that's my discussion.
Yeah, it feels like a Monopoly game right now. I'll give you 4 and you can give me, take this and.
Well, if you want to build a bigger place, build another upstairs bedroom and lock the door and say there's no access. It's a storage area. You know, put shelves in it. It's just a storage area. Now we've got all this space, but it's just a storage area. Now, the kids want to pull bunk beds in there and sleep in it and everything. It's a habitable space. That's got to be addressed as well, and I know we will. But that's, I think, just playing games with a bunch of volunteer counselors and planning commissioners with a bunch of lawyers that are getting paid for this, well, we volunteer all our time looking at thousands of pages and then have one slip past us and say, hey, you approved it, therefore you're stuck with it forever. Well, I don't feel I'm stuck with it forever. So if you guys want to wait and see more letters, that's fine. But I'm willing to make a motion that we deny the appeal.
Well, I have a couple of questions before I consider a motion, but I'm willing.
And I second it and then you can go ahead.
Is that an official second?
No, I said I'm ready to make one. I haven't made.
Okay, okay.
Just making sure.
I had a question on the whole, on the Harding garage as well. And the arrangement of the easement from the what documents that I read today, I was a little confused. The Nicholsons took over the original easement that the Hardings had come to with the previous owners. And it sounds like do the Hardings still own, do the Hardings own any of that property that the garage is on?
No,
Okay, so they are building a garage on property they don't own because they have an easement for it. And the easement allows, from what I can see, the easement allows two cars to be parked in a turnaround. It doesn't really say, it does say retaining walls, but I'm assuming that those retaining walls are for the road itself. It doesn't say anything about allowing construction of any kind of building on that easement.
it says any accessory uses. Yeah.
So that easement then is part of the Najimi's property?
Yes.
So the Hardings don't own the property where their garage is on. It's owned by, it's on property owned by somebody else.
Yes.
Seems like a weird agreement to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's unique. I will give you that.
And then the question of the two garages, you have, I guess it's a double garage, although it almost looks like two garages in the plan itself for the Najimi's house. But basically they have then the double car garage plus now the Harding's garage. So there's two garages on that property.
There's two garages on the lot. Yes.
And when I read the language regarding garages, it didn't come right out and say you can't have two garages. But I think if you read it and assumed only one garage would be allowed.
I answered Mr. Newton and asked that in Planning Commission. And if it falls down to should any lot contain a garage or carport, it shall be no larger than a two-car garage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so does that mean that any garage, you know, it doesn't say only one garage per lot, right? That's the easy way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, and nowhere on here says there's only 4 structures on this PUD. It talks about accessory structures in that exact paragraph. So, you know, yes, each one of these things has many ways to read it. And just like Councilor Benefeld, you know, this is part of a building permit process. I as well don't have time to read through thousands of pages of documents, and I make my decision on that at that. And yes, I know how I think the Planning Commission had said, you know, that I was dismissive or that this was trivial or something that the staff was. But no, it's we have, and I'm not trying to push things through or not. It's just that I have limited resource, limited time, you know, for all of what I do. And I look at that building permit and I make that determination at that time. That was my decision at the time.
But if it's a double car garage, you have a double car garage in the house, attached to the house.
Right.
And you have another double car garage on the property. And isn't it limited to just one double car garage?
Like I said, I did not make that decision. That was not what I read that as. It says, and you know, I just quoted it, was that should any lot contain a garage or carport, it shall be no larger than a 2-car garage. It's talking about garage doesn't state that, you're limited to one 2-car garage, right? It's a garage, not the. And I'm sorry, but that's what we're down to when we read these things. And yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't call it sloppy or whatever. It's just, like you said, it's a different reading and it's a different intent. And so I understand the difficulties in interpreting these things. I do have to do it every day.
I have another question too. It looks like the addendum to the real estate agreement that the Najimis have that they signed when they bought the property says that the habitable space is limited to 2,800 square feet. But they are proposing a house that's 3,745 square feet.
Right, because they've swapped out.
Well, this includes some of that land that they acquired.
Yeah, so my calculations, I have that as one of the exhibits, shows the different calculations of each one of those. And so I'm happy to, go into that, if you'd like me at the next time or whatever, but I just don't have that document right now.
Because if you look at the agreement, it says, at first it says something like 2,100, I think. And then you read on or you read within the documents that are accompanying that, it shows that the acquired property increases that to 2,800, but we're talking about property, and this is without the garage area, 3,745 square feet habitable. So I think there's a problem.
I'd like to see that. I don't, we had that question come up at the planning commission and we answered it at the planning commission. So we can look at that and bring that back up.
And I guess one other question I have, and I don't know what you do.
Go ahead.
What is the difference between common open space and outdoor space? Common open is a shared outdoor space and common open space. What is the difference? Because they seem to be used both ways.
Right. I don't see a clear definition of either. There's not.
So it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, common space is where the whole PUD, everyone who is an occupant to that PUD would be able to congregate, like a picnic table, something like that, where they'd enjoy. Green space is a little different. Green space, lawn, that kind of thing, maybe.
But I think what she is, the counselor is saying, it's common open space and common outdoor living area are interchangeable in many of the documents that I've read. I'm not speaking to the Greek.
Well, as I understand, the driveway would be a shared open space, but the only uses allowed there are removing vegetation, adding native plants, and if there's a picnic, a community picnic or something, you could use it that way. But it's not, that would not be counted toward the 25% private. Is that right?
It's not private.
Okay. So would the setbacks be considered part of the 25% private?
No.
So how are the setbacks then considered? How do they?
Calculations that were provided by KPFF and what I've recalculated in my mapping, that's part of that common outdoor open area.
But my backyard isn't common to my neighbors. Why would that be considered common space?
Yours is in a traditional subdivision and it's not a planned development subdivision, so they're handled differently. And so it's like a golf course in a planned development. That's a common outdoor living area, right? Not everyone gets to use that golf course, but it's a common outdoor living area in most places where they calculate that. So there's different ways of calculating these things. It's just like I said with the dual use issue. You drive 15 feet to get to your house. Do we count that driveway as dual use? No, we don't count that as dual use. Then but that's the same as this driveway.
Okay, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a little different. The nature of the planned development is provide cluster housing with an access road to each one. To me, the driveway is that little piece off of the road to the garage door, a few feet. I don't know where that makes any difference. I think the whole key is a driveway or a common road that serves everybody, the same thing. And I think if it's a common road that serves everybody, it seems like that's part of the common area. So I don't know that I have a problem with it. Is that common, what's that other word?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's an odd word, common shared
Yeah.
open space. That would, I think a driveway would be common shared open space, but when you start adding the setbacks to the calculation for common shared open space, that's when I think you have a problem. I think that's where Jeff is having the problem. Because like I say, my backyard is not common shared open space. And yes, I live in a regular residential neighborhood, but I would think even in a PUD, you would have some private setback, and your setbacks would be private space.
I have worked in many jurisdictions that have planned developments, and they define exactly what type can be included and can't be included in common outdoor open space or even. This one doesn't. So yes, I agree. But once again, I bring it back to that was on every draft. I've looked back through the record. Those things were identified on the plats that were before, not the last 8 minutes. So if we had issues with that as a city, they should have been addressed earlier in the process, and they were finalized. So, I understand the heartburn and all this. In many situations, agree with a lot of the interpretations and everything. But like I said, I have hundreds of building plans and inspections and tree reports and tree reviews. So I have to make those decisions. I make that decision. I am happy to listen to you and discuss these or answer any questions, but I refer back. That's why I read those standards back in, and cannot impress enough that you read this final finding of the order that's in your document. But because that's.
But I think the problem is then if you allow the setbacks to be part of the common open space, that allows for a specific size of building. If you take away those setbacks and you require more open space, then that building gets smaller. And I think that's where the crux is what do you allow and how big can the building be within that lot?
Yeah,
So
I think that what happens, and Jeff and I have had a lot of discussions on this, is that we're talking, we're using the word intent, and what Jeff has to work from and what we as staff have to work from is the record. And if there are definitions for these things, then they should be, included. If they're not included, I might look at it one way and you look at it another, but we have to be careful when we're making decisions on what somebody can do with their personal property if there's not something to back up my definition. And Jeff gets caught in that all the time. And to his credit, he's bringing, trying to clarify definitions and dealing with the planning commission on that. But, especially in the case of Nicholson, I've never seen like this, that I hear an awful lot about intent, a lot about what was said there. And I've never heard Jeff say intent or what was said at the hearing. He's going by the record. And unfortunately, it's not great. And it's not necessarily what all of us would have wanted it to be, but that's what he has to go by. And that's what we will be judged by when, depending on how far these things go. So that's,
I wish Jeff had been here.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, honestly, I don't think I'll see this again.
But also, Jeff administrate based on what he sees right before him, and I think he does an excellent job of that.
Mhm.
That's why we have a planning commission that adjudicates
Right.
issues, to take some of that burden off of Jeff. We have a planning commission that read all these thousands of pages and have concluded that the permit should be denied. So that's what, and now the appellate is appealing that to us. It's not a reflection on Jeff, I don't think. It's,
I agree. And, I'll be the first to say that is that, you have a recommendation. It's a planning commission recommendation. And you have to weigh that as part of this decision. And, that's why you have them to do this for you.
and, we have to be aware of the bigger picture at this level. And the LUBA order is important. There's clues in there, but this is a little bit different. And I don't feel that we should look at a previous ruling and say, because of that, we don't want to risk having this taken to LUBA. And too often, that's how we got into trouble with the Nicholson property in the first place. The whole council caved. So, we don't want to go to LUBA. And look at where we are. We've been there many times now because of that. Anyway, I've said enough.
What I'd like to do too is propose that maybe the building inspector should go back and visit the garage that the Hardings have so that we can be assured that nothing is out of place, because I really feel that more square footage should be added for that loft if in fact it looks more like a living area up there. So I'm concerned that a lot of activity's been going on up there for a long time. And I'd love the building inspector to check it out before.
Maybe they've been removing the kitchen and all that stuff.
I didn't see anything going out, just going in. So.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot about rightly so, the space and square footage and all that kind of stuff. Any comments on the tower?
Well, I think it'd be very difficult to be a storage area when you're trying to carry everything up some kind of a ladder that they've got shown there on the plans. It just seems odd to me that would be a storage area, but
it's too big a space to be what they're saying they're intending it to be. And to equate it to a spire, which doesn't really allow that kind of situation, it's obviously an observation tower. And I think they should adhere to the height restrictions.
Agree with that.
My only comment on that would be architecturally, it could be a light, it's called like a light chimney, but it's got a floor in it. So to me, it is defined as a habitable space once you have a floor in it. They took the floor away, went all the way down to the bathroom that's right below it, and just used it as natural light. That would make sense, and it would be a nice, to me, added amenity to the exterior building. But it's got a floor in it, so it's usable. So obviously it's habitable space.
Well, it also wouldn't have to be that tall if it was just for a light well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anyhow, I was just curious how everybody else felt about that part. Okay. Any other concerns and comments? I know I haven't typed in much, but that's because I kind of agree with what everybody's saying.
Okay, Sam, this is Bruce. And I believe I saw an intent to, let me look at me using the word intent. Your intention was to continue this meeting or this discussion? Or are you looking to make a motion tonight?
Haven't heard from Brandon.
Okay.
I'm just listening at this point. I don't have a comment at this time. I am interested to Bruce's point of what our intent is this evening.
Let me ask Bill our timing on this.
So I believe this is a type 1 development, so it's not technically subject to the 120-day rule. I'm trying to remember when the application came in. Jeff, do you recall when it was submitted?
January.
I do not know. You mean the original building permit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. I would have to look that up. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, but I don't believe there are any timing concerns with this particular development. Obviously, I know the city wants to respond in a timely fashion and get decisions out, but I believe you could continue it if you want to, or make a decision and we can write up some findings and bring them back to you, or you can authorize the mayor to sign them for you. Any of those options would be available.
And Bill, as far as the timing, and we're talking about the C, was it?
D.
The letters or whatever were in D. That's something that we can fix tomorrow. So I'm just trying to give folks an idea what the time frame might be. We do have a similar meeting set for October, or not October, listen to me. December, December, which is a workshop, and there's two things that you're going to look at, I think, tonight, as far as maybe one, for the scope of the review, because you have two appeals. And so if it's okay with Bill and with Jeff, you could do it as soon as the 8th. We could add it to that agenda, but beyond that, it's up to you. I'm just trying to give you what your opportunity.
I would suggest we continue it. I know there's a sense of let's get her done, but I also feel like if there's somebody that feels like they're missing information, we should cover all the information first and then get her done.
Are you
Well, I
looking for a
haven't
response, ma'am?
So it's,
It's up to you.
I said, I've seen the information, I've seen the letters.
If the letters are from, do you know whether the letters are from the opponents or proponents of this?
Only ones I have seen are from opponents.
Opponents, so they would be,
In support of the denial.
yeah.
So to be clear, the D exhibits, there are 5 of them. 2 of them are from Mr. Alterman. 3 of them are from Mr. or Mrs. Harrison. It's not clear which ones.
So we kind of know what the gist of the letters is.
Yes.
Correct. And anything that would have been in those letters, the planning commission would have made its decision, and we now have an on the record appeal. So anything would have had to have been identified in the material that is submitted to the council.
Again, I'm suggesting that just for the sense of propriety that we all confirm that we've read these letters before we go ahead and make a decision.
I've read them,
Okay.
but if you haven't,
Now,
these are in the planning packets.
what's that?
You're talking about the ones that were in the planning packet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I listened to the testimony. That was painful. And I read the letters.
How about the inspector checking it out before the 8th?
Okay.
Okay, so let's, Bruce, let's add this on the October or December the 8th.
I threw you off on that one, didn't I? Okay,
Yep.
Bill, can you suggest a motion?
So I would think, I believe we've already closed the public hearing, so the matter would be continued to the city council session scheduled for December 1st at, I believe, 6 p.m. for further deliberations.
December 8th, Bill.
I'm sorry, I said December 8th. And is it right at 6 p.m. or what's the time on that?
5:30.
5:30.
5:30. Okay. So December 8th at 5:30 p.m. for further deliberations.
That's just a
That
continuation.
will-
We
that
don't
will
need
just-
a
that will
motion.
just go on the, I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead.
That's just a continuation. We don't need a motion to make a continuation.
Probably be good. Yeah.
No, you probably don't. You're
So,
if the council is in consensus on that, we can just continue it.
And Bill and council, it'll be added to that agenda. It won't become the first item because we said the meeting starts at 5:30. It doesn't, preempt anything else. It's just a 5:30 meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
okay, then we are continuing that till December 8th at 5:30 meeting. Thank you. Next item. Let me find it here. Okay. Hosfeth appeal.
All right, I'll take that.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
This is a hearing, so I got to start it.
Okay, sorry, Sam.
That was gallbladder.
This is a hearing regarding the appeal request by Hofseth
Okay.
of the Planning Commission's denial of SR 2005 to allow a setback reduction to permit a plus or minus 5 feet reduction of the east setback to build a new single-family residence. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the city council to hear this appeal at this time? Does any counselor believe he or she has a personal bias to declare? Does any counselor believes he or she has a conflict of interest? Has any counselor had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit? Is there any additional correspondence?
No.
Okay, Jeff?
All right, City of Cannon Beach Planning Commission rendered a decision to deny the setback reduction request by Vito Sorelli of O'Brien Construction on behalf of Kyle Hopseth for a new single-family residence at the confluence of North Spruce Road and Ecola Park Road and 7th Street. Tax lot 100, map 51019 AD at its October 22nd, 2020 regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. The PC's findings are attached as Exhibit 2. Mr. Hofseth requested a review of the decision in an application received November 3rd, 2020, within the 14 consecutive calendar days appeal period from the date the final order was signed. City Council held a scope of review meeting on November 10th to discuss as a non-public hearing item terms under which it wished to review the matter according to Section 1788, 140 through 160 of the Cannon Beach Municipal Code, restricting the review to additional materials regarding the trees on the subject property. Now, if you'll recall, you guys, the City Council gave the option to remand it down to the Planning Commission if he wanted to go that route, and he chose to bring it before you instead of. Applicant had requested a de novo hearing as proposed in Exhibit A and provided a photo of the site's trees for the council consideration. The site has been staked and the one tree proposed for removal has been flagged with tape. The applicant is asking for reconsideration under the tree evidence provided. I'll briefly summarize the findings. The applicant, Vito Sorelli, on behalf of Mr. Hopseth, requests a setback reduction to construct a new residence at the intersection of Spruce, Ecola, and 7th. The property is in the city's residential very low-density zone where lots that are 10,000 square feet and less or less require a front yard shall be at least 15 feet, a side yard be at least 5 feet, except on a corner or through lot. The minimum side yard from the street shall be 15 feet, and a rear yard shall be at least 15 feet. Except on the corner or through lot, it shall be a minimum of 5 feet. Except where a rear lot abuts a street, it shall be a minimum of 15 feet. The subject property consists of an undersized lot of approximately 2,100 square feet, as shown on the site plan, which would be accessed off of North Spruce, and the site is currently vacant. The applicable criteria is, of course, the setback reduction standards under 1764 10A2. The Planning Commission finds that the proposed construction of this structure would place more trees in jeopardy of removal by extending the footprint of the building envelope and cannot find compliance. On A4, which the standard states, it is the purpose of setbacks to provide for a reasonable amount of privacy, drainage, light, air, noise reduction, and fire safety between adjacent structures. Setback reduction permits may be granted where the Planning Commission finds that the above purposes are maintained and one or more of the following are achieved by the reduction in setbacks. And the applicant has provided E, permitting construction on a lot with unusual configuration as the purpose for the setback reduction. This clearly is a unique site. Testing the lot and yard dimension definitions and standards. For instance, if we read the language exhibits, which I've identified as C1, as it has been traditionally been interpreted, each of the lot lines could be considered as a facing street, rendering a 15-foot setback from each. However, only Ecola Creek Road and North Spruce are improved right-of-ways, where 7th Street has no plans of ever being open for public use. If each were to be taken for face value as 15-foot setbacks, the buildable lot area would be restricted to approximately 150 square feet, as shown in Exhibit C2. Planning Commission discussed that the application stated they had recently purchased the home and were thus well aware of the restrictions of the property. The commission could not find compliance with the standard. And jumping to the conclusions, the Planning Commission discussed weighing the need of workforce housing and where those instances occur, such as Sea Lark Apartments in downtown. The commission weighed these needs with the reality of providing new residential development in areas and on lots that were clearly not platted for such needs. The commission finds the application lacks evidence to warrant a setback reduction. The motion, having considered the evidence in the record, upon a motion to deny by Commissioner Newton, was seconded by Commissioner Kerr, the Planning Commission, on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 against, denied the setback reduction as discussed at the public hearing. Any questions?
I'm just a little curious. I was a little bit confused. The setback is going to be off of, they want the setback off of Ecola Road, is that right?
That's I'll let the applicant speak to that, but yes, they're having it's 15 feet off of 7th Street from that north is what they're asking for that. And then there's 5-foot setbacks on all of the others.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't get that. Okay.
Yeah.
Understand that. All right.
And, like I said, Exhibit C2 shows with that triangle what would be remaining if true setbacks were implied, which is this little triangle in the middle here.
Okay, no more questions? Okay, then. The appeal will be reviewed against the criteria of the Municipal Code, Chapter 1788-140, request for review of a decision, Chapter 1788-150, requirements of a request for appeal of a Planning Commission decision, and Chapter 1788-180, review consisting of additional evidence or de novo review and Chapter 1764 setback reduction. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimonies, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The City Council shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving a record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the mayor, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Testimony is limited to matters which were raised at the Planning Commission hearing in written or orally. New evidence may only be submitted with regards to the property's trees. Okay. Is there a presentation by the appellant? That would be Kyle, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Am I coming through?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kyle Hopseth. My address is 34953 Highway 26, Seaside, Oregon, 97138. I have a small written statement. If any of it goes beyond trees, just cut me off. I won't be offended. But it's short, so see how it goes. But I'd like to start by just saying thank you to the mayor and city council for hearing my appeal on the planning commission's decision regarding my request for setback reductions on the property I own on Spruce Street off Ecola State Park Road. I've provided the city with several pictures showing the property lines and the proposed building site in relation to the trees in the area. If any of the council members had a chance to see this lot in person, they would note the stakes and lines I've placed to show this, as well as the flagging on a single alder tree that would need to come down to accommodate the two off-street parking spots that have been proposed. As a note, I believe that this tree is unhealthy and potentially rotten inside based on my summer observation of it, and would meet approval for removal if assessed by an arborist. Also of note, this property has only alders, I believe 5 in total. It's either 5 or 6. The application for a setback reduction requires the property to meet 8 separate criteria, as you are all aware. The report initially provided by the city planner found compliance with each criteria. However, in regards to 17.64.01.A2, I kind of want to read that real quick. That states significant views of the ocean, mountains, or similar features from nearby properties will not be obstructed any more than would occur if the proposed structure were located as required by the zoning district. The finding is mentioned by Jeff. I think you already read the Planning Commission's finding on that, was that it would place trees in jeopardy. I think their words are, yeah, the proposed construction of the structure would place more trees in jeopardy of removal by extending the footprint of the building envelope, and they cannot find compliance. This is not the case, as I would plan to remove the unhealthy tree following the assessment of an arborist and of course the approval of the city, no matter what I'm able to build on this site. The current footprint of the proposed building is only 544 square feet. And without approval of setback reductions, that will shrink dramatically, but the alder in question will still need to go, of course, pending approval. I'd also like to respond to the finding on the Planning Commission on 17.64010A4, as I believe it's relevant, but I did just hear something saying that it needs to be very specific to trees. May I proceed?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. My lot does have an unusual configuration. That would be in that A4E. So it does apply to that, I believe, as well. It does not abut any other private property and has been traditionally interpreted to have a 15-foot setback on all sides. I did know this when I purchased it, but also knew there are setback reductions that can be applied for. And I hoped it would be a logical and simple thing to set front side yard, so to speak, on a buildable tax lot that is otherwise very hampered by the traditional interpretation. I'd also like to note the Planning Commission's conclusion on page 4 of their findings. The conclusion suggests that my lot was clearly platted for residential, or perhaps was clearly not platted, I'm sorry, for residential or perhaps workforce housing. I respectfully disagree with that finding. It is platted and taxed as a residential building lot, and I don't see how it compares to the Sea Lark apartments downtown as was suggested. I do ask that this lot be judged by the applicable criteria for setback reductions provided by the city of Cannon Beach. And thank you for your time and consideration. Appreciate you guys hearing my appeal.
Thank you, Kyle. Are there any presentations by proponents? The only one I could think of, I don't really have a list for all this, but Vito was here for a while. I don't know if he would like to say anything or not.
No, I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vito. Let me get rid of that. At that, is there any presentations by opponents? Okay, doesn't sound like it. Doesn't look like it. I'm trying to look for hands being raised. Don't see that. So, staff, Jeff, do you have anything to add?
No, we didn't receive any notice of anybody wanting to speak or on that. And no, I have nothing further to add.
Okay. And I will close the public hearing and move for consideration. This one is a totally different animal than our previous one. I would like to chime in and just say that these corner lots, those lots that have these really odd setback challenges, are, from my experience on planning commission, this is the reason for setback reduction, so that we have the ability to look at the lots in a light where they are looked at individually without the general aspect of a setback rule. This one, having 3 roads, is a real challenge for any designer. So their only choice was to ask for a setback reduction to make this property work. So in that sense, that and the fact that these odd undersized lots that we will start seeing more of, we've seen a few already, and I think this is the best way to handle them. Seeing a small cabin, which is one of the things that we've dreamed about, rather than McMansions popping up all over the place, here's a nice little cabin popping up. So in this case, this is one where I support the landowner. So that's my comment on this. I'll send it out to the rest of the council. That would be
my question is, Mr. Hofstadter, what do you do for a living?
Sorry, I'm slow with the unmute button there. I'm a contractor. I work actually primarily in Cannon Beach, and have had my license, my contractor's license in Oregon for, I believe, 12 years.
So you as a contractor would know about these setbacks and that they would be a challenge right off the bat, correct?
Correct.
And so why didn't you make it contingent upon being able to have your building site approved?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm wondering that more and more, but I
Because
was a little,
most in real estate, we handle that a lot because
yeah.
it is
Um,
not a sure thing.
No, I knew it wasn't a sure thing, but I thought the lot was a really good, had a lot of potential, and presented itself well to fit all of these criteria. And I did talk to several people that are involved here and got their opinions before I purchased it. And I think that would be my best explanation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
I have a question also. I drove up and walked over and took a look at it. I agree with the tree, not much of a tree. But I wondered why, my bigger concern would be the setback reduction on Ecola Creek Road or Ecola Park Road, just from a visual standpoint of going up to Parkway and having this deck kind of loom over the road. I mean, it's not quite there, but it's, you know, that's what you'll feel when you drive up there. I just wondered if you had taken a look at basically not having such a large reduction in your setback along Ecola Park Road, and rather move the building structure further north where there is a street that's not going to be developed, and build your living space over the garage so you still had your still met your parking requirement. Vito's a very clever architect. I just wonder if that's an option that you guys looked at.
Yeah, am I still on? Yeah, looks like it. There is not a garage that will be built over. That's not part of the plan. We do have 2 parking spots that we were trying to keep off road there that are off 7th Street. We went towards Ecola State Park Road with our proposed plan because in fact, we're still about 40 feet off of the asphalt there, even if we get this setback reduction, which is comparable, I believe, to quite a few houses that are farther up the road towards Ecola State Park proper. I don't feel like this house, just to reiterate, the footprint's 544 square feet. It would be a 2-story home and would be under 1,000 square feet because it wouldn't be a total 2-story. So it's going to feel, as Bill Stidell mentioned, it's a cabin. I don't think it'll feel looming, and it certainly will be in no way a McMansion or have that looming presence that that we might not want to see there.
No, I appreciate you having staked the footprint because in walking down there, you're right. It is far from the pavement. It's just not so far from the street easement. But you're right. It won't be as if the street was shown on this same plat that I'm looking at, it would be, well, I estimated about 30 feet away. So it's still a good distance from the physical road, even though it's fairly close to the road easement. So thank you. Appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
How many trees would be taken down for the entire house? Any idea?
Yeah, just the one. And I'm sorry.
For the entire house, just one tree?
That is correct. Yeah. It's flagged on the property, and I'm quite sure it's one of those trees that I think we've all seen around here that it's not sprouting leaves off its primary branches, but is shooting shoots off the side. So from my experience, I would, and which is clearly not a professional arborist experience, but I would assume that it's rotten in the middle.
And the rest of the vegetation is just scrubby stuff. It's no big change.
Anybody else? Brandon? What, I'm muted?
No,
Thank you
no,
very
Mary.
much. I was trying to unmute myself and I wasn't able to.
Oh. Now you are.
Thank you. I just wanted to concur with you, Sam. I think this is an opportunity for exactly what these variances are for. Actually, it's a setback reduction, not a variance, but anyways, that's my point.
Thank you. I'm just curious, and I don't know, I suppose I would ask this of Vito or Kyle. Had you thought about asking for a variance on reducing the parking requirement? So you only needed one parking space and shuffling it around with that added benefit there? Did you think of that at all?
That might be best for Vito. I kind of designed the layout and then Vito placed on the property and shifted it to fit a little bit better, what we were hoping for. I think that, do you have anything to say on that, Vito? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. When we looked at it, yeah, Kyle and I did move this building around the site some, but we felt that due to the zoning requirements that potentially shifting up and requesting a parking variance could potentially lead towards more of like a safety concern. And, you know, most of these single family residences end up having multiple cars. In this case, Kyle being a contractor could potentially have a trailer on site. It just seemed like a necessity to have the appropriate parking for his use of the property. So we did examine all, and I think Kyle hit on the points of trying to tuck this house up away as far as possible. It isn't depicted very well on the site map or the images how far away Ecola State Park Road is, but you know, being up on the site looking at it, it still feels like another tax lot in between his residence and the paved road. So I think we tried to place it in a way to achieve parking, but also, you know, keep a limited view from Ecola State Park Road.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you, Vito. Okay, then. Does council have a desire to go one direction or the other? Do I need a motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
Move we grant the Hofseth appeal, application number 20-02 of Planning Commission decision to deny a setback reduction.
I'll second it.
Any last comments? Okay, Jennifer?
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
No.
Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Mayor Stidel.
Yes. There you go. Thank you. We'll move on to our next item. If I can find it, hang on. Okay. Consideration of resolution 20-28 for the purpose of amending the employee handbook dated December 6, 2016, revised October 2nd, 2020 to update the equal employment opportunity policies. Is this Ashley?
She's still there. It
Um,
can certainly be me. Bruce,
Okay, go ahead, Ursula.
what was that?
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Okay. hopefully this will be a pretty quick agenda item. Oregon law, back in 2019, the Oregon legislature passed a law that required all employers to update their harassment policy to include specific terms. So some of the terms that we needed to update in our policy was to make sure that we had a process for reporting that included multiple individuals. So somebody's reporting harassment, they don't just have to go to their supervisor, they can go to any supervisor within the city or the city manager. They have to be able to, the city has to put employees on notice of their legal rights, including some of the time periods that are associated with filing legal claims. And the city has to publicize that it has it cannot force employees into entering non-disparagement and non-disclosure agreements. So based on that change in law, we discussed updating the handbook. CIS, your insurance provider, has a model policy. Jen worked with that policy, incorporated it into your current handbook. And so what we have in front of you is a handbook that is predominantly based on the changes from the 2019 legislative cycle, but also just updating this part of your handbook to best practices.
Great, thank you. Bill, Bruce, do you have anything to add?
I do not, sir.
Okay. So we just need to approve this, I believe.
That is the request.
I'll make a motion. I move to adopt resolution 20-28 for the purpose of amending the employee handbook to update the equal employment opportunities section.
Second?
Seconded, last comments? Okay, Jennifer?
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Mayor Stidle?
Yes. Thank you for all your work on that one. That was a good catch. Next item, scope of review determination for Roberts appeal. Appeal 2003, Planning Commission decision to deny an administrative appeal, AA 2002, 03, and 04 of an administrative decision to conditionally approve the building development permit DP 2004 for a new residence. Jeff.
I will hand this off to Bill.
Thank you, Jeff and Mayor Seidel, councilors. This is the time you've set aside for discussing the scope of review for an upcoming appeal hearing. Luckily, this discussion should be significantly shorter than we had anticipated. On November 17th, the Planning Commission made a decision to deny an appeal from Stan and Rebecca Roberts seeking approval of a single-family dwelling in the vicinity of the Hemlock S-curves. At the request of the applicants, we took action to move this matter along quickly, setting our scope of hearing for this evening, the date appeals are due, and the hearing for next Tuesday, December 8th. We anticipated that someone could have requested that the appeal hearing would be de novo, or at least request limited additional evidence. However, the city received 2 timely filed appeals, both of which raised different issues, one filed by the applicants for the dwelling, one filed by the next door neighbor to the north. But both of the appeals have requested the hearing be held on the record with no new evidence. And because that's the default position under your code, there's really no decision for you to make on the scope. Because nobody requested that it be de novo or that new evidence be allowed in, it will be heard on the record. However, there is one thing I do want to potentially discuss with you, and that's time limits for presentations next week. Typically, there's unwritten arguments. There's a significant amount in the record. Both appellants have submitted significant written arguments with their appeals. But with the matter entirely on the record, limited to arguments by the parties, it might be worth setting some sort of time limitations, or consider it, say, 15 minutes per appellant or 5 minutes for others or something. The time limits aren't required, but they are allowed under CBMC 1788 100B2 which allows the presiding officer, that's you, Mayor Stidel, to set reasonable time limits for oral presentations. You can certainly leave it and let unlimited time, allow participants unlimited time, but time limits can sometimes help focus the arguments and ensure there's enough time for you to deliberate on the matter. So I thought I'd just bring that up in advance so that if in fact you are, if you believe that would be helpful to the council, we can discuss it tonight and make sure that the parties are aware of any time limits you might want to set.
Thank you, Bill. I do agree. I think time limits are a very useful tool in that situation. How does everybody else feel?
I agree.
Agree.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds like a positive there for time limits. You said 15 minutes for a presentation?
This is just trying to, come up with something that made sense. We had 2 appeals that were filed, again, from the applicant and from the next door neighbor. During the course of the hearing, a few other people participated, and the initial thought was 15 minutes is what an appellant gets at, say, the Court of Appeals or at the Land Use Board of Appeals. That seemed like a reasonable time to allow somebody to make their case. And then also to allow people who aren't appellants but do want to make their thoughts known to you. Something in the neighborhood of 5 minutes would allow sufficient time for somebody to make that presentation. And that's just my initial suggestion, but it's really what does the council believe is a reasonable time limits.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I not knowing that run through one of these that onerous. I think that sounds like a legitimate timeline. So let's go with that.
All right, so we will make sure the parties of record are aware that there will be time limits on the presentations and that the matter will be held on the record, and it's scheduled for 5:30 next Tuesday, December 8th.
Great.
And I have a question. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to read in our packet. How soon can we get that packet?
I think you already have most of that packet.
Most of it?
Available on your, it's on the agenda, actually, you can click on it.
Okay.
And it's available out there. And we'll verify that everything's received in there. I have the 2 new appeals that you guys just spoke, and then I'll add the materials from that and tonight, and we'll have that first thing in the morning.
Okay.
I have a question. That if we're doing it on the record, are we going to be allowing people to submit, public to submit their opinions and letters? We're going to read those? And that's not part of the record, other than those that truly were submitted as part of the record.
So when we talk about on the record, that's no new evidence, which is defined as information showing that a particular criteria is met or is not met. Argument is sort of explanation of what the evidence in the record shows. So for example, if somebody were to submit a survey saying that the road is 15 feet from the house, not 5 feet, that's evidence. But to say the code requires a setback of 15 feet versus a setback of 5 feet, that's argument. You're talking about the code. Admittedly, this is a very hard line to patrol at times. And it's something, Jeff and I have discussed about when we move over into new evidence as opposed to argument. But that's something that, we as the people who are most familiar with the record need to draw that line when it comes up. But to the extent people are making arguments that are based on evidence in the record, that is something that historically the city has allowed people to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then. So essentially, that means we don't have a decision to make tonight.
Right.
Uh-oh.
That's correct.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. You all disappeared, so then I found you. There you go.
You're still here, Sam.
I thought we were finished.
Okay.
So yeah, with that, we're done with this particular agenda item.
Okay, let me find the next one. All right, sure. You put a lot of stuff in that one.
Get to vote.
Oh, there it is. Oh, we got a ballot. So we have a city commission for a board commission ballot, for one for budget committee and one for public works committee. This is interesting. I'm going to have to do this vocally.
Me too, Sam.
Yeah, we can't do that because we have people online, so we'll have to do it.
Yeah. So we have Amber Fowler for Public Works. If you wish, you may present or not. You don't have to, but if you're online, you may do that.
She,
You have to unmute your.
you're unmuted, Amber.
There we go.
She needs to acknowledge on her end.
Amber, last chance.
Hello, I'm sorry. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I stepped away from my computer for a moment, so I missed the last, or whatever the question was. I'm so sorry.
Can you move back from the microphone?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Way back.
There we go.
Okay, is this better?
That works.
Yes.
Better.
Okay, sorry, yes.
All we're asking is if you want to present anything to support your position, you're probably going to get anyhow.
Oh, I didn't know, I mean, I submitted the application and answered the questions, so I didn't know what you were expecting me to present, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are additional ones.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, well, thank you.
You bet. If anybody has a question.
All in the application.
Okay, then, let's do this. Those at the dais may send in their ballot, and I will vote for both Phyllis for Budget Committee and Amber for Public Works.
Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote.
That's what's separate.
Yeah,
Do
well,
that.
we thought we had ballots and I didn't put ballots for anyone. So let's do Amber for the Public Works Committee. Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
Yes.
Mayor Sedell.
Yes.
Okay, and then let's do one for Phyllis for the Budget Committee for renewal. Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Mayor Sedell.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Jennifer. You're too efficient for me.
and then we'll need a motion.
Well, I move that Phyllis Burnt be, I guess, reconstituted. Be reelected to the City Budget Committee, and that Amber Fowler be elected to the Public Works Committee.
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Or- yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
that works. Next item is HRAP. Kelly?
Hi,
Hi.
is my audio all right?
Yeah, you
Yes.
look like a puffin though.
Yeah, the camera on here isn't that great. So you get the puffin view, which is really what we're here to talk about anyway. So thanks everyone for sharing your time with me. I'm happy to provide the 2020 year-end summary of the Haystack Rock Awareness Program. And thank you, Rusty, for taking care of the PowerPoint there for me. I know it's getting late and we are definitely approaching my bedtime, so I'm gonna try and keep this all as succinct as possible and just give you the information that I think is most pertinent. But I anticipate I will probably take about 10 minutes of your time right now. So this first slide, I just want to kind of quickly mention that while 2020 marks the 35th year for ATRAP, it also marks our very first year of operating during a significant global viral pandemic. So like most everyone, this has not exactly been a business as usual year. And while the ocean and tide pool environment really does prepare us all for a high level of adaptability, I think that this year has kind of been one of the ultimate tests in that. Having a new director, myself, come on board partway through the start of a season would have been change enough for everyone on its own, but my arrival also coincided exactly with the COVID-19 related closures and protocol changes for city, county, parks, and state and US governments. So what that did with ATRAP is we experienced a period from March to July with various suspensions and changes in operations. First, we did have a complete shutdown for the stay-at-home order for the 2 weeks. And then following that, there was a limited operation period where we were basically present not to do any educational work, but really just on a kind of enforcing policy basis. And then once the county entered phase 2, we opened up back to our what you would say is quote normal operations on the beach. And so data from this period is a bit limited and not exactly reflective of the general trends of where the program was heading prior to 2020, nor are they necessarily indicative of what the future trends are going to show. Because this year just has a giant asterisk on it for most everyone. And so because of that, I'm kind of looking at this data a bit more in isolation than necessarily comparative to where we have been in the past. So this next slide, I just have some highlights for the 2020 season here. I would be amiss if I just skipped over my joining the team in March, and I want to extend a huge thank you to council and city staff and the community who has been really great at welcoming me into this new world out here and making this transition during a pandemic as smooth as one possibly could have been during it. Another major addition that we have was there's a new beach on the truck, and a new beach truck, and this truck has now been outfitted with a sliding deck and canopy top. And I would completely be out of place if I did not acknowledge and mention a huge gratitude to Friends of Haystack Rock for funding that modification for us. This change has allowed for the retirement of the old beach trailer that we had, and that makes the truck both safer and easier to drive on the beach. So this updated truck will be making its debut in the next season for 2021. Another major change that has been implemented are the new safety and hygiene protocols for staff and volunteers that ensured that we were able to work during the pandemic and that we could have the confidence that everyone is being kept safe, including the visitors who come to the site. We were able to operate with the exception of the stay-at-home order and with the support of the city and Friends of Haystack Rock during the beginning of the pandemic once these procedures were created, and that allowed us to continue our mission of protecting the biodiversity of the marine garden while state parks themselves were temporarily shut down. And because of that, it allowed us to really seamlessly transition once phase 2 for Clatsop County came into play, and we were able to fully operate again. So part of this change was also to move all of our field trips and planned trips that we had for the summer into a virtual setting. And what is exciting about this development is it's actually allowed us to expand our digital operations and presence more than we ever had before. And it's pretty accessible now that most people have been forced into adapting to this virtual setting as well. And this is something that I think will absolutely continue post-pandemic. It really helps to expand our reach farther than we traditionally have had in the past. And it's been a pretty simple modification to have to do. So lastly, this has been a decently active year in terms of grant writing, and it's a trend that I hope to increase as we not just expand the projects that we're working on to improve our program, but also as grant funding sources normalize again in a non-emergency state. In particular, I'm kind of aiming at focusing primarily on the education and research sides of the HRAP umbrella. So this next slide has just some of the general statistics that were collected here. So despite the pandemic, many of our numbers are actually still fairly similar to a couple from the past years. One of note would be the number of beach shifts, which despite the 2-week shutdown, we actually continued our operations into the end of October with fully staffed because the number of visitor numbers did not decline in early fall as rapidly as they typically do. And this is attributed to the post-Labor Day not showing a huge drop-off in visitor numbers, probably related to school closures or schools being distance learning rather than students going back to school. And so our volunteer numbers, though, are understandably declined this year. I think we have about half of the number of active volunteers this year, and that's something that was to be expected. We emphasized that volunteering is just that. It is absolutely voluntary. And while I do have confidence in our creation of a safe outdoor work environment, I really did prefer that volunteers who considered themselves moderate to high risk if they were to contract a viral infection, that they stay home, and staff, and I was confident that staff would be able to handle all the shifts on their own, and they did. The next item that I'd like to highlight is the percentage of thanks that our staff and volunteers who were on the beach received from visitors. And these are the various statements of gratitude that we get. We tend to mark these, and in particular, if there's anything that people emphasize. And this number is a bit higher than we actually usually see. And something that people mentioned is they appreciated having someone present to help educate them, because many of the parks and reserves this year had not had the ability to maintain their typical seasonal summer interpretive staff. And this is a huge item that I actually do want to emphasize and thank the city for allowing us to continue to fund our staff, because their presence not only ensured that the protections for the nesting seabirds persisted, but it provided an educational benefit to the large amount of visitors that we had this year. And it showed just how important that stewardship is to the city. And I think in general, it is an absolutely positive example set to show that this small city has these values, and is just another reason of why this community is really so special and different from what you see in a lot of other small places. Lastly, on this page, I mentioned the number of viewership that we receive on a couple of our public live events that we had in lieu of those canceled field trips. I think these numbers really just speak for themselves on the power of digital outreach. Our very first virtual live field trip saw a peak viewership of just under 3,000 people, and it was from all across the country, though primarily on the West Coast. And since this recording stays on Facebook even after the event has ended, it has continued to gain further viewership and is currently sitting at over 11,000 unique viewers. So this next slide, I'll move through these next couple ones a little quicker, but we conducted a human dimension study this summer during the month of August, and this was to capture an idea of how well our awareness actually is. So I had a baseline understanding of where to kind of take our direction and focus in the future. This was awareness for both our program and for the marine reserve protections that are in place. So our interest here was to focus not just on visitors who come to the rock itself, but the general Cannon Beach visitors, as well as the business owners. So for the visitors, these surveys were conducted at Haystack Rock, the City Hall public parking lot, and the parking lot in downtown. And it kind of highlighted some interesting stats regarding awareness based on how many times visitors had been to Cannon Beach. the awareness of protections actually drastically increased only once the number of visits exceeded 5. So also noticeable different was awareness based on where people were in the parking lot, with visitors who stopped downtown being the least aware. However, overall, nearly all the responses had positive perceptions towards the existence of protections, and for those who knew who we were, positive perceptions towards HRAP. The next slide has these kind of similar numbers for the data that we got from business owners. Most notable, I think, from this was we asked how frequently customers actually mention or ask about Haystack Rock, and most businesses had said that customers do inquiry about it, which I think is just a highlight of how important this one little site is to this city, and for bringing the visitors into our businesses, even when they're not necessarily lodging or retail that have anything to do with Haystack Rock itself. But the survey actually did highlight to us that there is probably better work that we can do with businesses in a way that would be mutually beneficial for them. And that's something that's going to go into our strategic planning for the next couple of years, but it's something that I'll have to delve into a little deeper. The next slide, I'm just going to talk briefly about our research on the typical citizen science surveys and programs that we operated with this year. With most of these happened and were able to go on like quote normal, but with some limitations, especially in the sense that the number of volunteers that were involved was reduced or limited with certain groups. So we anticipate to continue all of these partnerships and are actually looking to further expand them in the future and find more engagement coming directly from us as a program to link staff and volunteers into these research efforts. Of note from these programs, there was one successful nesting at Haystack Rock itself for the black oyster catchers. From this nest attempt, we had 2 eggs that hatched, and we can confirm the survival of one of those fledglings. The puffin nests this year, they were down with a high count of under 100 this season. And my understanding is that's kind of reflective of the year for the entire coastal survey regions, with some sites showing no nesting occurring, but generally we saw lower numbers that were observed. And it is a concern to see nesting numbers continue to decrease over time, or at best show to be stabilized. It's only more reason to kind of emphasize the importance of conservation and protection efforts, while also furthering the academic and government surveys and research that are conducted to determine how the population at large is actually doing, as well as be able to draw conclusions on why we may be seeing these general trends. Next slide, we have the future directions that I kind of want to focus on in the most immediate future right now. And one is to create a more formal volunteering program that has a formalized mentorship program, especially for young and new volunteers. This would be to ensure that the volunteers feel appreciated and welcomed regardless of their familiarity and backgrounds with tide pool ecology, as well as to make sure that we are helping them accomplish whatever their personal goals and reasons for volunteering with us are. We are also working on recording various series that will be used to create an online resource of videos and trainings that will be available to the public or to our staff and volunteers that will range in a large amount of topics. And this curriculum is going to be continuously growing and pretty broadly expansive. It would be able to be used for classrooms in schools, for visitations, or for even other public or private schools that would want to use them. It would be available to other agencies that we partner with, and accessible to the general public for viewing and education. And of course, the most important part of that is I want it to be used to train and educate incoming staff and volunteers. Another area of emphasis that I'm going to focus on is research and partnerships with university research. I know from my own personal career background in academic research that it's extremely valuable and impactful projects that come out of these institutions, and I would like to see HRAP have a larger role in facilitating some of that growth of body of research especially now in the wake of climate change. I think it's more needed now than ever before. And we offer a very unique position for seabird studies as well as environmental sociology related projects that I think could be extremely important and informative to other programs at large. Lastly, we're working on various diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to make HRAP a more inclusive space for our staff, volunteers, and our visitors. These initiatives are going to focus on language, accessibility, and prioritizing access and representation to some of the underrepresented groups in Oregon and the United States. So in conclusion, I just want to, I guess not in conclusion, but in closing, I want to thank you all again for your time and your continued support. Feel free to reach out to me about any questions or concerns that you have. This was definitely far from a normal year, but I'm actually pretty optimistic about the direction that we're heading. And I think I'm now more ready than ever to put in some large effort to work on growing and expanding this program in a meaningful way that really makes sense for the rapidly changing ecosystem that we have here and our community at large, which itself is also changing.
Very good. Well done, Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly, and you're doing a great job.
Keep it up.
Yes.
Okay. Were there any questions for Kelly at the? Okay. We'll move on then to our next item, which will be Rick, Memorandum of Understanding with the Empire Amateur Radio Club. Rick, you on with us?
How are you, everybody?
There he is.
Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, as we talked last time about the MOU and also the Sunset Amateur Radio Club, if we could possibly move this forward and get a vote on it, what they've done to support basically this whole county and this whole region is something I've been able to tap into over the past year. And ideally, I would have been able to analyze what their needs were and put it into my budget request for this year, and that wasn't able to be done. So this year, I'm hoping that we can move forward and get this MOU established. We do have a couple of other areas in the county that have an MOU with them as well, and I want to join them and partner with them, and so the county can move forward and improve that service as a whole. And even recently, when we've seen just any kind of power outage, or even recently, we had some fiber cutting issues when it came down to our internet was down. We have the ability now with other means to bring in internet and service our community where in the past we haven't had that. So I'm looking forward to this being a great step forward.
Thanks, Rick. And I think the recommendation is council to move forward with the MOU with Sunset Empire Amateur Radio Club. And we had talked about, was it $10,000, Rick?
Yeah, initially it's $10,000. They've been able to support me through this whole process and build the program throughout this whole year. And then what that gift and donation does to them is support the infrastructure that brings all these services into our community. Meanwhile, while I can actually budget and start building the services inside the community.
And I think that the $10,000 that we're talking about, we will be able to find those funds. So if you move forward with it, we will make sure that those funds are transferred. And also, Rick, it's my understanding that we're relying on these folks for a lot of our training.
Yeah, currently right now, they've already done preliminary training for our CERT team and for myself. They're getting me up to speed. They've been fortunate enough to allow me to come to their work sites and their locations to see how the system is actually built and actually participate in some of the maintenance. So I've really been fortunate to have them take me underneath their wing a little bit and be, someone who's not a radio person, and they kind of show me what's going on right now and educate me on how things work. So their gift, they didn't ask me for this. I'm the person who basically put this forward and said, if we're going to bring this service to our community, we need to start supporting their ability to pay for this. And they've already given us ham training and CERT training for no cost whatsoever. So it's been a fantastic relationship so far.
Recommend approval.
I think this is really awesome
Yes. Yeah.
development. And I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the signing of the memorandum of understanding with the Sunset Empire Amateur Radio Club.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Jennifer?
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Mayor Stidell?
Yes. Thank you, and thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, we have one last item. City manager evaluation results. Where'd everybody go? Wait a minute.
Hey, I believe this one is mine. Can you still hear me okay?
We do.
Okay, so the last item on the agenda is completing the city manager evaluation for 2020. A quick reminder of the process. In early November on the 3rd, we met in executive session to review the city manager's performance using the criteria. The council came to a consensus on each criterion. We then met with Bruce on November 18th in executive session and discussed the results of the performance evaluation. So typically at the end of the evaluation process, we come back out into open session and we discuss a merit increase. For this year, Bruce has asked that the council not consider a merit increase in recognition of the fact that city employees elected to forego the cost of living increase for 2019-2020, which Bruce also forewent. So in light of Bruce's request, the final step in the evaluation process is for the council to adopt a motion in open session summarizing the council's review. I took some liberties in drafting a suggested motion that, in my estimation, summarized the council's review, and that is at the end of my staff report.
There we go. Thank you, Ashley. I'd like to add that this has been a challenging year. We had a lot of just generally difficult things. Some personnel issues and some pandemic issues and, just stuff. And our conversations with our city manager were direct and fruitful, I believe. And so that's my take on it.
I just want to thank everybody. I appreciate your comments. And I'm very proud to be your city manager and grateful that you're allowing me to continue to do it. And we have a great team here.
Well, I agree. I think Bruce has done an incredible job in very difficult times. I do question his sanity of not asking for more money, but we'll honor his request. With that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I move to approve the results of the city manager. Let me start that over again. I move to approve the results of City Manager St. Dennis's performance evaluation for the year 2020. The council agreed St. Dennis successfully performed his duties as city manager.
I second it.
Very good. Any last comments? Jennifer?
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Mayor Stidell?
Yes. And thanks again, Bruce.
No, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, that concludes our agenda. So good of the order, our councilor comments. I believe Bruce has some, he's asked us to look.
Sam, I have a couple questions on the monthly status report.
Okay, sure.
Okay, one is it says CD director met with the Moon Brothers on possible rezoning plans for property in the East Cannon Beach. Can you elaborate on that, Bruce?
Yeah, they had, they are looking to set up an operation outside of downtown. and there were discussions about locations, that sort of thing. I don't know how much we'll be able to accommodate what they're trying to do, but there were discussions with them.
Okay, thank you. And then the CD director worked with the city manager to provide a letter of support for DLCD, Meg Reed and the Oregon Coastal Management Program proposal to the NOAA Climate Program Office. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, they are applying for a grant, and they asked the city for a letter of support. And so it was just something that we drafted up and then provided to them that they included in their grant application.
I think that's great.
Good, that is. They're good for partnership.
And then under Public Works, took down the birdhouses for the purple martin swallows. There were 5 nests this year, and Kurt counted about 14 adult birds in August. So more breeding pairs are expected next year. That's really good news because that's such a wonderful feature, I think, for that particular area.
It is. It's a draw.
Yes, and then HRAP is recording videos to create an online virtual classroom. And I know that that was mentioned tonight, but I think that's wonderful because it's such a good program.
It really is. And they've actually, I don't know if they did it this year, but in the past, they did kind of an in the water class for people in Wichita or something. And they were actually out there with the tablet and we're showing things, and it was very well received. But now we're getting more sophisticated. We can actually record those, and they as a group, they adapted very well to what was going on, and I attribute a lot of that to Kelly, but also to Lisa and some of the other staff members, that they just embraced the change and said, "We're going to do this," and it's very, very pleased.
We'll get famous.
I have one question. I'm looking at our packet from tonight, and I see some of the Roberts information. Are we getting more? Because I see all kinds of exhibits that I don't think we have in this packet. So,
It'll be in the one that goes out tomorrow.
okay,
See, tonight was about scoping.
so, yeah, but I'm just seeing that, they said, well, we've already got it, and we might have part of it, so it doesn't look like we have the whole, anywhere near the whole thing here.
Right. And we'll get it out.
We need bigger tablets.
Huh?
We need bigger.
Yeah, you do.
We need 2 of these, so I can imagine what's going to happen there.
Yeah,
Are there any other questions?
no, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And just another comment, I think I mentioned this before, but Kelly is finishing her master's degree in STEM education.
Oh,
And so this is, right, it's a perfect.
Yes.
I was amazed at 3,000 people on the online programs. Gosh.
11,000 have seen it. Too,
Yeah, total, yeah. Amazing.
So, very cool. We have a good bunch here.
Yeah.
We were going to talk potentially, and I really don't want to have you do this now, but we were talking about retreat items, and we can finalize this. We'll add it to the agenda on the 8th. But we did provide a list of things that were on the agenda last time, provided kind of an update on where we are on certain things. And I do want to spend, I would say it's probably going to be 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, on water and wastewater financing.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Pardon?
So that really sounds exciting.
It is very exciting. And also looking forward to the yes, and we can shorten it way up. But it's going to be the balance between what we think is the right thing to do and then what can we afford. So we'll be talking about that.
I have a couple comments. I think HR should be ongoing. I don't think it should be covered. I think it's going to constantly be a topic to look at. As far as the OPRD outfalls go, I think that it's on the table and it's necessary for us to have a plan. The Environmental Council, I think we should check with them before we retreat to, I didn't see it here on the list. It was on the initial list you put together. Or maybe it is here, not in current work plan. I think we should check. They had money to work on something, and I think it'd be really nice if we could continue that. And then there was another item about short-term rentals. 1 week for 6 months. I hadn't heard anything about that before.
That was something that was suggested just for this duration of the.
But didn't we vote on it?
And I thought we.
Right. So I'm wondering why it's still there. But anyway.
Almost moved down.
My recollection was that it wasn't taken away, but it was just on the table, my recollection. It's totally up to you. And I agree that the HR is ongoing. When I said covered, it was that we were dealing with Mary now and bringing her in and trying to go ahead and get the
We really don't have that all put together yet.
Yes, you're right.
We can address that during the.
Yeah,
planning session.
I didn't want it off the table, which in red looks like we have completed it. So that was why I was bringing it up.
Good point. I understand.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, we'll add this to the agenda. If you have any thoughts before, if you want to let us know, we can pass them on to the rest of you for.
And we're meeting here in the chambers, right?
Yes.
The retreat, and it is public.
Yes. As it always has been.
Yeah.
How many people can be here?
Well, it's
as of our rule.
Yeah.
It's virtual public.
Yeah, we have, is it 12? I think it's 25 still, isn't it?
Yeah, but we, with our administrative order, have closed the public, but
yes.
Forgot to ask Rick how we're doing on that.
Which?
Well, tomorrow's a new day, right? For
not very.
December 2nd, the end of
high risk area. So.
Yeah, but there was some change coming out on Wednesday.
Something coming out on the 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Check with Rick. He knows it all.
Yeah.
Okay, I have nothing.
Okay, then. Anybody else have anything? Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
See you next week.
Yeah, let's do this again. It's fun.
Let's get out of here.